The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast.
Welcome into the show today. My name is Tim, and I am the host of The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast. This past weekend, I put in hours of work in a full rebrand. We've got a website, mnsportsgrind.com, the podcast, The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Everything is updated. The website is updated. The podcast is updated. Thank you for making this podcast part of your day. Make sure you hit that subscribe button if you're watching this on YouTube or listening somewhere else. And I want to talk about real quick, because there are some big things we need to talk about today, why I called it The Grind. What is the inspiration behind The Grind? Well, if you take a look at the logo, The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast, and the website, it is about reaching the pinnacle, reaching the peak. On top of the mountain, we have Jack Morris and Kirby Puckett, two dominant players in the 1991 World Series. And then as you pan out or look other places in the picture, you've got Anthony Edwards and Justin Jefferson trying to climb the mountain. And unfortunately, I could not get this part on Twitter because the picture was too big. But you look even further down the mountain, and then you've got Kevin Garnett and Randy Moss watching Anthony Edwards and Justin Jefferson try to reach the peak. And the purpose behind The Grind, it's been 12,300 days, or over 33 years, since the Minnesota sports scene has produced a champion in one of the four major sports. And right now, that is the record across the sports platforms. The Minnesota sports has the number one spot right now in teams that have not produced a champion that have four major sports teams. Also, my life has been a grind. To get to this point, to work the job I'm working, to do the things that I'm doing, this podcast is a grind. So the title really encompasses the grind that Minnesota sports teams have been on and my life, the work, the intensity, the fight that I've needed to showcase when I lived in Washington, D.C. for 3 years, and when this podcast has begun to try to get it to a place where it's sustainable and producing the thing that I want it to produce. So a little bit of intel behind the purpose of The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast. But as far as that goes, let's talk about something else. Because Naz Reid and Julius Randle signed contract extensions worth $100+ million. So we're going to talk about that. I'm going to deliver my take in just a second, but I need to tell you about 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis first, because they transformed our bathroom in 48 hours, and that's their promise. It will not take 8 weeks, 10 weeks. Don't wait 3 months for a project to get done when it can get done in 48 hours, and it can get done right. My wife and I, we didn't want to sacrifice only having one bathroom and cramming into our tiny bathroom in the basement of our house where we had to get ready for work, our kids trying to get ready for the day. Maybe you have that situation where your kids are trying to get ready for school, you're trying to get ready for work. You don't want to sacrifice and have to go down to one bathroom. That stinks. 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis will remodel your bathroom in 48 hours, a full remodel. Our prior bathroom had a blue floor, a blue step, handrails, a moldy shower, a brown vanity, an ugly countertop, one sink, and a mirror that was disgusting. And then 5-Star Bath Solutions came in and remodeled everything. New floor, new tub, new surround, new vanity, new countertops. We went from one sink to 2 sinks, which is our favorite bathroom feature, and we got a new mirror. All in 48 hours. And we had our bathroom back in 2 days. 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis. Contact them today. Free consultations, affordable payment plans. 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis. All right. Naz Reid first. He was the first domino to fall for the Timberwolves. On Friday night, Shams from ESPN reported, just in, Minnesota Timberwolves Naz Reid intends to sign a new 5-year, $125 million contract to stay with the franchise, including a player option, sources tell ESPN. Critical agreement between the Wolves and Reid's agents, Sean Kennedy and Jeff Schwartz of XL Sports. Now, this becomes the first major move in the Alex Rodriguez and Mark Lowry era, because people were wondering where Naz Reid would potentially land, because the most obvious thing in the world was that Naz Reid was going to opt out of this $15 million player option because he knew he could receive more either with the Timberwolves or on the open market. So really, this boiled down to the negotiation that Naz Reid and his agency would have with the Timberwolves, or if they wanted to drive that price up and test the free agency waters. Naz Reid is only 25 years old. Now, this is a lot of money for a player coming off of the bench, getting over $20+ million per year, with Rudy Gobert still on the roster and with Julius Randle signing his 3-year deal. The city does love Naz Reid and has loved him for years, with signs everywhere, the Naz Reid t-shirts, the Naz Reid excitement, because he brings energy. He brings a spark plug to the organization. And Naz Reid's story is cool. From undrafted to the G League to earning regular minutes on the Timberwolves, Naz Reid has been the underdog story that people love to cheer for, because they can feel for Naz Reid. Naz won the 6th Man of the Year award in 2023-2024. But here's where we need to be careful. And here's where Naz Reid and Timberwolves fans need to have a sense of awareness. Because now that Naz Reid got the extension that he's been looking for, 5 years, $125 million, now that he has the hype and the cash, Naz Reid is going to be asked to deliver on a nightly basis, or the fan base that has grown so much to love him will quickly give him a cold shoulder and rename their children. Because Naz Reid has been fascinating over the last few years, and there is no doubt that people have named their baby Naz because of Naz Reid. I guarantee you there are more Naz Reids or Nazes in the great state of Minnesota than there has ever been in the history of Minnesota because of Naz Reid. But the overarching point, now that Naz has earned the $125 million contract, the moments like he had versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, where he couldn't handle the ball, he couldn't make a shot, he really couldn't produce anything for most of that series, are going to be much more criticized than ever before because he has the dollar. And that's what the dollar does to sports fans. Once you earn a contract worth $125 million, and now you put yourself in a place where you're among the elite of players coming off the bench or players playing in general, then you are going to be much more criticized. That's what comes with the dollar. That's what comes with the money. And it's so interesting to see the narrative switch on players. You see it all the time in sports. You see narratives switch from this player being a good player. We love this guy. He's awesome. And then the narrative changes to, oh, he kind of stinks. Why did we pay him all this money? I guarantee, this is my Naz Reid guarantee. I guarantee that at some point next season, when Naz Reid goes through that weak stretch where he sucks, can't make a shot, turning the ball over, dribbling off his leg, Timberwolves fans will start to question whether or not Naz Reid was worth the $125 million contract. Because Naz Reid, this is the player he is, and the reason why he comes off the bench. Naz Reid is inconsistent. There are moments, literal moments, where Naz Reid looks like an all-star NBA basketball player. Knocking down threes, crossover, step back threes, little jump hook in the lane, defending guys on the perimeter because he has the quickness to do so. Naz Reid sometimes looks like an all-star. But then he will have this week or two stretch where Naz Reid looks like a player that should be riding the bench. And that's the player Naz is, and that is the player he was during the playoffs. Naz was largely inefficient in the playoffs last year, but he had fourth quarters versus the Lakers and Warriors where he knocked down massive threes to finish off the game, which completely changed the narrative of Naz not showing up for an entire game to Naz not showing up for 3 quarters, but then delivering in the fourth quarter. So it's something to be aware of, this narrative shift for Naz Reid, because he is the fan favorite. He is beloved by the organization and the fan base, Naz Reid. But if he does not deliver and show that he's worth the bag, then Timberwolves fans will shift really quickly and say he wasn't worth it. All right, Julius Randle. He signs a big deal. 3 years, $100 million. Randle had a deadline that he needed to make a decision on, and it was his player option. Is he going to opt in for $31 million a year for a 1-year deal? Or is he going to opt out, maybe test the free agency waters like Naz Reid, or sign an extension or re-sign a deal with the Timberwolves? And with Randle being the age that he is, Randle, what is he? 30 years old. This is his last opportunity to make a contract like this, to make money like this in the NBA, because players that are 31, 32 are not going to get the contract that Julius Randle got when you have a career like Julius Randle. If you're an elite player, that's a different story. But if you're Julius Randle, this is probably the last time he'll make a contract over $100 million. And he knew that. His agency knew that. Randle played 69 games Nice. For the Timberwolves, averaging 19 points a game, 7 rebounds, and 5 assists. Now, the Randle story becomes interesting because through 75% of the NBA season, the Timberwolves roster looked like a mess. It looked awful. The chemistry, the cohesiveness was terrible. But then Julius Randle found his rhythm late in the year after he came back from his injury with the new group and started to play like an all-star. Versus the Lakers and versus the Warriors, Julius Randle had his way. Driving to the paint, making threes. Randle was a phenomenal player in the first 2 rounds of the playoffs and was a huge part of the Timberwolves making it to the Western Conference Finals in back-to-back years. When he is under control and composed, when he stays within himself, he's an all-star level player. But when Randle faces adversity, when he faces toughness, like he did versus the Oklahoma City Thunder, then you often see Julius Randle crumble. And not just crumble offensively or defensively, but you see the air literally falling out of the tires. You see Julius Randle's energy drop. And that's why he was benched for a 4th quarter versus the Oklahoma City Thunder. Now, it appears that the Timberwolves are content with running it back. And it's interesting because Gobert has a big 3-year deal. Randle signs a big 3-year deal. Naz Reid signs a 5-year deal. All of these things possible because Karl Anthony Towns is not on the roster. And that's why they traded him. They traded Towns so that they could have salary cap and roster flexibility moving forward. But it appears that they're running it back. And I think that's a mistake. Because as fun as the run was last year in the playoffs to the Western Conference Finals, this is where the objective mind takes over from Tim, from me. This is where my objectiveness steps in because I'm not a Homer fan. And I hope you get that through this podcast. The Timberwolves beat the Lakers in round 1. LeBron is 40. Luka Doncic was slow, and the Timberwolves finally exposed it. They swept him 4-0. It wasn't even close. The Lakers were clearly an opponent that could not withstand the athleticism of the Timberwolves. Huge advantage, Timberwolves. Round 2, the Timberwolves are down early in game 1. And Curry goes down with an injury. And that paves the way for the Timberwolves to win that series. Now, I hate people that come with the conclusions. It's a pet peeve that say, well, the Timberwolves would have lost that series if Curry was playing. We don't know that. The Timberwolves still could have won that series even if Stephen Curry was playing. So I'm not going to make a generalization and say the Timberwolves would have lost that series. However, the series would have looked completely differently if Stephen Curry did not get hurt. Because that took the wind out of the sails of the Golden State Warriors offense, and their offense completely relies on Stephen Curry making plays for himself and for teammates. So, huge advantage Timberwolves. And then the Timberwolves get annihilated versus the Thunder. It wasn't even a series. So the way I look at it, as fun as it was for the Timberwolves to make the Western Conference Finals again, the way I look at it is they were still nowhere near the NBA Finals because they got blown out in 5 games against the Thunder. A series that wasn't even close, not even competitive. So even though they were only 1 series away from making the NBA Finals, they had a cakewalk through the Lakers, through the Warriors, reached the Western Conference Finals, and got blown out. If the game or series went 7 against the Thunder, I would have a different tone. But the Thunder had their way with the Timberwolves. And the Thunder barely escaped versus an Indiana Pacers squad whose best player was injured for the final few games of the series. So the Thunder were a beatable team with the right formula, and the Timberwolves did not have the right formula. So that's my big concern with running it back. I highly doubt the Timberwolves will make it to the Western Conference Finals again next year or the NBA Finals. Because let's face it, the Western Conference Finals has to stop being the goal. You made it there 2 times in a row. If you make it there 3 times in a row and you lose again, then it becomes a problem. And then it becomes, why can't the Timberwolves, led by Anthony Edwards, get over this Western Conference Finals hump? It's fun to make the Western Conference Finals when you're not expected to make it to the Western Conference Finals. But now that you've done it and proved it twice in a row, if you can't advance past that part of the NBA playoffs, then it becomes a problem. Then it becomes, why can't you get past this hurdle? What is holding the Timberwolves back? Now, to look at it on the other side, it is possible that Anthony Edwards takes his game to another level, that Jaden McDaniels takes his game to another level, and that is what propels the Timberwolves roster and organization forward past the Western Conference Finals. I would doubt it, but that is possible because they also lose the presence of Nickeil Alexander-Walker because they focused on signing Naz Reid and Julius Randle to longer and bigger contracts with a lot of money. And now they can't afford to pay for Nickeil Alexander-Walker, which means he is going to be playing somewhere else next year, which is a player that will be missed from the Timberwolves. A consistent player defensively, could knock down the corner threes, shot 38% from the three-point line. He was a good player and a player the Wolves could rely on consistently coming off the bench. So my question with all of the signings the Timberwolves made is, what's next? Is there a trade up Tim Connolly's sleeve? I wanted the Wolves to trade for Colin Sexton, but they, the Utah Jazz, traded him to the Charlotte Hornets for a center. So that's out the window. And the different possibilities of trading for a player are quickly running out. So it appears that the most likely scenario at this point is going to be the Timberwolves running it back and hoping that Anthony Edwards and Julius Randle Julius Randle too, and Jaden McDaniels take their game to another level, and Naz Reid and Julius Randle earn those contracts worth $100+ million. So that's the take. This is the grind. 12,300 days of championship-less sports in Minnesota, outside of the Minnesota Lynx. The grind. A Minnesota sports podcast. Remember, 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis, free consultations, affordable payment plans. They remodeled our bathroom in 48 hours. They'll do the same thing for you. Thank you for going on this podcasting journey with me, and I hope you all enjoy the rebrand. 5-Star Bath Solutions of Minneapolis, The Grind, a Minnesota sports podcast.